My name is Myra Townsend. I am 34 years old. Last Tuesday, I came home from work and saw a moving truck parked in my driveway. My parents were standing on my front lawn, and my brother was carrying boxes toward my front door as if he already lived there. My mother looked straight at me and said, "He has children, Myra. You are single. You do not need all this space." She said it loud enough for everyone on the street to hear. My father stood behind her with his arms crossed, nodding as if everything had already been decided, like I was only a tenant in my own life and they had just chosen not to renew my lease. What they did not know is that I have security cameras, and those cameras recorded everything, including what the three of them did last Thursday while I was at work. Before I walk you through this story, if it connects with you, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly feel it. Also, share your location and local time in the comments. I would like to know where you are watching from. Now, let me take you back to 3 years ago when I first bought this house, and explain why my family never believed it truly belonged to me. I started working at Morrison & Hale Construction the summer after I finished college. I was 22 years old, wearing steel-toed boots that gave me blisters for the first 3 months. My hard hat was 2 sizes too big. I was a junior site engineer at the lowest level. 8 years later, I became a project manager, overseeing commercial builds across 2 counties. I earned that position the same way I earned everything else in my life, by showing up every day, staying late, and never once asking my family for money. The house was a 3-bedroom Cape Cod on Maple Lane in Ridgewood. It had white siding, black shutters, and a porch that wrapped around the left side. It was listed at $220,000. I paid $44,20% in cash as a down payment, using savings I had built since my first paycheck. The mortgage was in my name. The insurance was in my name. Every payment came from my account and only my account. The day I signed the deed, I sat in my car in the parking lot of the title company and called my parents. My hands were still shaking from signing the papers. "Mom, I bought a house." There was silence, then she said, "That is nice, honey. Kyle is having a hard time with Heather. We are worried about the kids." I remember staring at the steering wheel. The ink on my signature was not even dry, and I had already been pushed aside. I told her the address, and she said she would come see it soon. That was 3 years ago. My parents have never visited, not even once. They have never seen the porch I repainted, the garden I built along the back fence, or the kitchen I retiled on weekends with my own hands. But they always knew exactly how many bedrooms it had. That detail, they never forgot. My brother Kyle is 4 years older than me. Growing up, that difference felt closer to 40. Kyle got the first car, a used Chevy Blazer, paid for by our dad the week he turned 16. I got a bus pass. When Kyle got his first apartment after college, Dad paid the deposit and the first 3 months of rent. When I graduated, Dad said, "You are smart, Myra. You will figure it out." And I did figure it out. That became the issue. Every time I managed things on my own, it confirmed their belief that I did not need help. Meanwhile, Kyle moved from job to job. 6 jobs in 10 years. Sales associate, warehouse supervisor, insurance adjuster, landscaping crew. Each job ended the same way. A boss who did not understand him, a coworker who worked against him, or a system that was unfair. It was never Kyle's fault. Not once. He married Heather when he was 28. They had Emma, who is now 8, and Liam, who is now 6. They are good children, kind children, children who deserved a stable father, which is likely why Heather filed for divorce last year. She received primary custody. Kyle got every other weekend and a lot of resentment that he directed at everyone except himself. My parents blamed Heather. "She tore this family apart," my mother said at Thanksgiving, speaking across the table as if I was not even there. My father agreed. A man needs support from his wife. She gave up on him. No one asked why Heather gave up. No one asked about the unpaid bills, the maxed-out credit cards, or the mornings when Kyle did not even get out of bed. Those facts did not fit the story my parents had been telling themselves for 38 years. That Kyle was perfect and the world kept failing him. 2 weeks before the moving truck arrived, my mother called me. That call changed everything. It was a Wednesday evening. I was scraping paint off the bathroom window frame when my phone buzzed on the counter. "Myra, we have been thinking." Those 4 words have never led to anything good in my family. "Kyle needs a place. Heather is keeping the apartment, and he has been staying with us, but your father's back cannot handle him sleeping on the couch any longer." She paused. "Your house has 3 bedrooms, and it is just you. It makes sense." I set the paint scraper down. "No, Mom. That is my house. I am not saying forever. Just until he gets back on his feet. He has been trying to get back on his feet for 15 years. There was silence, then I heard the shift in her breathing, that small pause before the guilt started. "So you would let your niece and nephew be homeless?" "Emma and Liam live with Heather. They have a home." They need their father close, and Kyle needs space for them on his weekends. You have 3 bedrooms, Myra. 3 for one person. I heard the phone move, then my father's voice came on, deeper and firmer. Do not be selfish, Myra. Family helps family. I do help, Dad. But I am not giving away my house. No one is asking you to give it away. We are asking you to share. You are asking me to move out of my own home so Kyle can move in. We are asking you to think about someone other than yourself for once. I closed my eyes and took a breath. The answer is no. The call ended immediately. No goodbye, no suggestion to talk later. Just silence, followed by the dial tone. I stood there in my half-finished bathroom, with paint chips on the floor, and told myself that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week passed. No calls from my mother, no messages, no passive-aggressive Bible verses sent at 6 a.m., which was her usual way of showing disappointment without saying it directly. Nothing. If you grow up in a family like mine, you understand that silence is never neutral. Silence from my mother is never peace. It means she is planning something. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it. I went to work, handled my project reviews, ate lunch at my desk, and came home to a quiet house on a quiet street, pretending that the tight feeling in my stomach was only stress. On Thursday, my coworker Rob noticed me staring at a spreadsheet I had not touched for 20 minutes. Are you okay? He asked, leaning against the side of my cubicle with a cup of coffee in his hand. Family situation. My brother. I had told Rob about Kyle a few weeks earlier, not everything, just enough. He was the closest thing I had to a best friend at work. He was an IT manager with a dry sense of humor and no patience for nonsense. They asked me to give him my house, Rob. He blinked. Give him your house? 3 bedrooms. Just me. Apparently that makes it reasonable. And you said no? I said no. Then it is finished. Yes, I said, turning back to my screen. It is finished. But it was not finished. That afternoon, during a project status meeting, my phone lit up with a notification. I glanced at it. Ring camera, motion detected at the front door. I was 15 miles away, sitting in a conference room full of contractors discussing foundation details. I could not check it right away. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes. By the time I finally looked, the notification had been sitting there for almost an hour. I should have checked it sooner. I opened the Ring app in the parking lot after work, sitting in my truck with the engine running and the heater on against the cold November air. The video was timestamped at 2:07 p.m. Kyle was standing alone on my front porch. He looked around, left, right, then over his shoulder, like someone who knew he was not supposed to be there. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a key. My spare key. The one I gave my parents 2 years ago for emergencies. I had said, in case there is a fire, or something happens to me. He put the key into the lock, opened the door, and walked into my house as if he was browsing through a store. The camera recorded 12 minutes of footage. Kyle walked through every room. He opened closets. He tested the water pressure in the bathroom. He stood in the doorway of the main bedroom for a long time, holding his phone and recording video, moving it slowly from left to right as he studied the space. He was examining my home, my life. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I watched him walk into my kitchen, running his hand along the countertop that I had installed myself. He opened my refrigerator. And looked inside as if he was planning what groceries to buy. Then he left, locked the door, and drove away. I called him. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sat in that parking lot for 10 minutes with the engine still running, watching the footage again and again. My own brother walked through my house, recording my rooms like a real estate agent preparing a listing. And the key, my parents gave him that key. They did not ask me. They simply gave him access to my home as if it belonged to them. I called my mother that night. I did not waste time with small talk. Did you give Kyle my spare key? There was a pause, just slightly too long. He wanted to see if the house would work for the kids. Work for the kids? Mom, it is my house. You are being dramatic, Myra. In the background, I heard my father say, just let him look, for God's sake. Let him look. He did not change anything this time, but he walked through every room with a camera. Did you send him to do that? I asked. My mother's voice became tense. We are trying to solve a problem. Your brother is sleeping on our couch. He has 2 children who need a bedroom when they visit. You have space. I do not understand why this is so difficult. Because it is mine. I bought it. I pay for it. My name is on every document. And family means nothing? Family means you do not enter someone's home while they are at work without permission. She went quiet. I could hear the television in the background, a game show with applause and bells. My father said something I could not fully hear. Then I heard, Mom, in a lower tone. Her voice changed after that, softer, controlled, the tone she uses when she is adjusting her approach. He was only looking. Sweetheart, no one is doing anything without your permission. But that was not true. I had seen the footage. I watched Kyle test the key, walk through every room, and record everything. That was not a simple visit. That was planning. And my parents had allowed it. They had already made their decision. The only thing left was to remove me from the situation. I ended the call and sat on my couch in my living room, in my house, and stared at the wall. I did not change the locks that night. Part of me wanted to act immediately, but a stronger part of me wanted to see how far they would go. The next Thursday, it happened again. The same time, early afternoon, when I am always at work. This time, my phone alerted me while I was overseeing a concrete pour. I stepped away from the crew and checked it right away. Ring notification. Person detected. Front door. I opened the live feed. Gerald Townsend. Donna Townsend. Kyle Townsend. All three of them standing on my porch. My father had the spare key in his hand. He unlocked the door. Kyle followed him inside carrying a plastic bag from a hardware store. My mother stayed outside for a moment, looking up and down the street. Then walked in and shut the door behind her. I stood at a construction site 15 miles away, watching my family enter my home without my consent. My phone was shaking. No, my hands were shaking. The hallway camera showed Kyle kneeling at the front door with a screwdriver. He had a new lock set, a deadbolt and knob with a brass finish, still sealed in its packaging. He removed my lock and replaced it with the new one. My father stood over him with his arms crossed, watching like this was a normal task, like they were repairing something small. My mother walked through the house carrying a cardboard box. She set it down in the second bedroom. I watched her take out a small stuffed bear, a folded blanket with cartoon dinosaurs, and a pair of small rain boots. She placed them neatly on the floor near the closet. They were preparing a child's room in my house while I was at work. I took screenshots of everything. I saved every video clip. My hands were still shaking, but my thoughts were completely clear. I watched my father carry my niece's teddy bear into my living room as if he owned the space. There were 14 minutes of footage, every second recorded, every face clearly visible. Janet Calloway has lived next door to me since I moved in. She is 68 years old, a retired real estate attorney, with silver hair that she keeps in a low bun and a sharp, focused gaze. She was trimming her hydrangeas when I pulled into my driveway that evening. I must have looked shaken because she set down her shears and walked over before I even closed my truck door. Myra, what happened? I showed her the footage right there in the driveway. She watched it twice without speaking. Then she looked at me over her reading glasses. This is criminal trespass. They used a key without your current permission, entered your home, and changed the locks. In this state, that is at least a Class A misdemeanor. They are my parents, Janet. And that is your house, Myra. She handed my phone back. Here is what you need to do. First, do not confront them yet. Let the evidence build. Second, save every second of that footage somewhere secure. Cloud storage, external drive, both. Third, call a locksmith tonight and replace every lock. And fourth, if they come back, call the police and file a formal trespass warning. A trespass warning against my own parents? A trespass warning against 3 adults who entered your property without permission and changed your locks. The family side is their issue. The legal side is yours. She gently squeezed my arm. Her hand felt steady and reassuring. Love does not give someone the right to your door locks. I nodded, went inside, and called a locksmith. But I kept thinking about what she said. A trespass warning becomes public record. In a town like Ridgewood, public record means everyone will know. The locksmith arrived at 7:30. Mike from Ridgewood Hardware. He had worked on 3 of my construction projects. When I showed him my deed and identification, he did not ask questions. He simply nodded and started working. Front door, back door, garage entry, all replaced. New deadbolts, new knobs, new keys. 3 full sets, all in my possession. Someone installed a new lock here recently, Mike said, holding up the one Kyle had put in. Cheap brass. Still new. This is not the original. I know. He looked at me for a moment, then finished the job without saying anything else. I paid him in cash, and he left. I found Kyle's box in the second bedroom. The stuffed bear, the dinosaur blanket, the small rain boots placed neatly against the wall. I picked everything up carefully, carried it to the garage, and placed it on the workbench. I did not throw anything away. These items belonged to my niece and nephew. My anger was not directed at them. I installed a second camera covering the back door and tested all the camera feeds on my phone. Every angle was covered. Every entry point was monitored. Then I sat on my porch in the dark. I opened the footage from earlier that day again. I had already watched it 6 times, but there was one moment I kept replaying. Near the end, just before they left, my mother stood in the hallway and said something to Kyle. The audio was low, but I turned the volume all the way up and held the phone close to my ear. She will get over it. She always does. I lowered the phone and looked out at the empty street. My mother's voice, recorded inside my own home, telling my brother that my feelings did not matter, that they never had. Friday morning, 6:42 a.m., the family group chat became active. It was the one my mother created 3 Christmases ago, the one no one leaves because leaving would cause conflict. A message appeared from Donna Townsend: "Please pray for our family. Myra is refusing to help her brother and his children during their time of need. We asked her with love, and she responded with selfishness. Please keep us in your prayers." There were 13 people in that chat. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my grandmother's sister, people who send birthday cards and see me during holidays. The replies started within an hour. Aunt Linda wrote, "Oh, Donna, I am so sorry. Families should stay united." Uncle Steve wrote, "That is unfortunate. Kyle has already been through so much." My cousin Rachel sent me a private message. "Hey, what is happening? Your mom seems very upset." I did not reply to anyone. I opened each message, read it, and saved it. I took screenshots of everything. Then Kyle sent me a direct message. "Come on, Myra. It is just a house. I have kids. Just a house. 8 years of overtime. Every dollar tracked. Every sacrifice made. Just a house." I placed my phone face down on the counter and made coffee. I drank it slowly. I went to work. I completed a site inspection, approved a framing schedule, and ate a sandwich at my desk at noon. At 4:15, another message from my mother appeared in the group chat. "We are coming over Saturday with the moving truck. This is happening whether Myra agrees or not. Kyle and his children deserve a stable home." I read it 3 times. Then I locked my phone and drove home. Saturday was the next day. They were actually planning to arrive with a truck, expecting me to step aside. They did not understand me at all. I want to pause here for a moment. If you are watching this and your family has ever treated your no as if it did not matter, as if your boundaries were only an inconvenience, then pay attention. Your no is a complete sentence. And if you have experienced something similar, share it. What did they try to take from you? I read every response. Saturday was coming, and they truly showed up. On Friday afternoon, I went next door. Janet had coffee ready. She always does. She keeps a pot warm until 5. She says it is for herself, but there are always 2 cups set out. We sat on her screened porch. The air smelled like damp leaves and wood smoke from somewhere nearby. I told her about the group chat message and the plan to bring the moving truck on Saturday. Janet stirred her coffee and stayed quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My brother tried to take my parents' house after they passed away. 1994, I had to take it to court. I won in the end. But the hardest part was not the legal fight." What was the hardest part? Accepting that my brother did not see me as family. He saw me as an obstacle between him and what he wanted. I looked down into my cup. She had just described my situation in one sentence. "Myra, if they show up tomorrow, you have every right to call the police. You own that property. They have no legal claim, no lease, no agreement. If they refuse to leave, it is trespassing. And if I file a trespass warning, it becomes public record. This is Ridgewood, population 9,000. People will know." She looked at me over her glasses. "People already know, Myra. Your mother has already shared her version with everyone in that group chat. You are not the one who made this public." She placed her coffee cup down. "Sunday is your father's birthday, right? At the church hall." I nodded. "You do not have to go, but if you do, bring facts. Your mother will already have her version of the story prepared before you walk through that door." I drove home and sat in my driveway for a while, watching the porch light turn on as evening settled in. The people who truly care about you do not need a legal order to respect your door. That is what Janet had said, and I kept thinking about it. Rob met me at the diner on Franklin Street that Friday night. It had vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting for years. We had been meeting there every couple of weeks since I started at Morrison and Hale. There was never a plan, just food and honest conversation. I showed him the footage on my phone. He watched it carefully without looking away. Then he set the phone down and looked at me with the same serious expression he uses when something does not make sense at work. "That is breaking and entering. It is my family. It is your house. Those are not the same thing." He took a bite of his burger, chewed slowly, then pointed a fry at me. "Did you back this up? It is saved on my Ring Cloud account. That is 1 copy. If anything happens to your account or someone gets your password, it is gone." He reached into his laptop bag. "Give me your phone for 5 minutes." He backed up the footage to 2 separate cloud drives and copied it onto a USB stick he already had with him. People who work in IT always seem to carry USB drives with them. 3 copies. "No one is deleting this," he said. "Rob, I am not trying to build a criminal case." "I know." He wiped his hands on a napkin. But if they deny everything at your father's birthday, if your mother tells everyone you are lying, you will have proof. I am not going to confront my father at his birthday party. I did not say confront. I said if they lie, you will have the truth. He opened his laptop and installed AirPlay on my phone so I could connect it to a larger screen if needed. Just in case you need to show this on something bigger than a 5 inches screen. I smiled for the first time in days. I will not need that. He shrugged. Of course not. Saturday morning, 8:45, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the street. The air was cool and still, one of those late autumn mornings where the sunlight hits the trees at a low angle and everything looks calm and temporary. I had slept maybe 3 hours. I had already checked every lock twice. The cameras were active. My deed was in a folder on the kitchen counter next to my identification and my mortgage statement. 8902, I heard it before I saw it. The low sound of a truck engine turning onto Maple Lane, followed by the sharp hiss of air brakes. A U-Haul box truck, the 14-foot type, pulled up in front of my house. Kyle was driving. Behind it was my father's gray Ford F-150. My father was driving, and my mother sat in the passenger seat wearing sunglasses, holding her purse like she was arriving at a normal event. I did not move. I stayed seated on my porch and watched them park. Kyle turned off the engine and stepped out. He walked to the back of the truck and opened it. Inside, there was furniture, a bed frame, stacks of boxes, a child's bicycle with training wheels, a lamp, and a microwave. He had packed everything needed for a household. My father stepped out of his truck, stretched his back, looked at the house, my house, and adjusted his belt. Then he walked toward the porch with the posture of someone who expects to be obeyed. All right, Myra, let us not make this difficult. Down the street, Janet Calloway had just come outside with her garden hose. She stood in her driveway watching. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson was collecting her mail. Next door, Martinez family paused while loading their children into a minivan. My mother stepped out of the truck and looked at me as if I was the problem. Then she said the words that changed everything. She straightened her jacket, walked to the center of the lawn, my lawn, and spoke in a loud, clear voice. The same tone she uses at church gatherings so others can hear. Myra, do not embarrass yourself. He has children. You are alone. This house is wasted on you. The word hit hard. Wasted. Not unnecessary. Not more than I needed. Wasted. As if my life in this house, the years of work, the mortgage payments, the weekends I spent fixing and building everything myself, meant nothing because I did not have children. Mrs. Henderson stopped moving. The Martinez family paused completely. Janet turned off her hose. My father walked up the path and stood next to my mother. We raised you. We gave you everything. This is the least you can do. Kyle stayed near the truck with his arms crossed, leaning against it, smiling calmly as if everything had already been decided. I looked at all three of them, my father on my walkway, my mother on my lawn, my brother by the truck, and felt something change inside me. It was not anger or sadness. It was something calmer and stronger. My mother turned slightly toward Mrs. Henderson and raised her voice again. I am sorry you have to see this. My daughter is being very difficult. We are only trying to help her brother's children have a stable home. She was putting on a performance right there in front of my neighbors, building her version of the story. The caring mother. The ungrateful daughter. The struggling brother with children. I placed my coffee cup on the porch railing and stood up. I walked down the steps slowly, one step at a time. No hurry. I stopped on the walkway about 6 feet away from my parents. Close enough to speak clearly. Close enough for everyone nearby to hear. This is my house. My voice was steady. I had not prepared what to say, but the words came easily, like they had been waiting for years. My name is on the deed. I paid for it with my own money. No one in this family contributed anything. My father's jaw tightened. Do not speak to us like that. Respect goes both ways, Dad. And you brought a moving truck to my house without my permission. His face turned red, not from embarrassment but from anger. He was not used to being challenged, especially not by me. Kyle stepped forward. Come on, Myra. Do not act like this. Like what? Like someone who owns her own home. He started to respond, then stopped. He was not used to me standing my ground. None of them were. For 34 years, I had been the one who adjusted and stayed quiet. My mother crossed her arms. You are going to regret this, Myra. When you are older and alone and no one calls you, you will think about today. Maybe. But today I still have my house, and it belongs to me. Silence followed. A heavy silence that filled the space. Janet stood in her driveway watching. Mrs. Henderson remained on her porch. The Martinez family stood by their van, their children quiet. No one spoke, but everyone was paying attention. My father reached into his pocket and took out a key. He walked past me toward the front door as if I was not even there. He inserted the key into the lock and turned it. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Kyle moved quickly behind him and pulled out his own key, the one for the lock he had installed last Thursday. He tried it. It did not work. My father stepped back and looked at the door, then at me. Myra, you changed the locks. I changed them back after your son replaced them last Thursday. The air went still. Kyle lowered his hand slowly. He stared at the door in disbelief. My father's expression changed quickly, confusion, then realization, then something close to fear. My mother, still standing on the lawn, spoke again. What are you talking about? Thursday, Mom. 2:14 in the afternoon. All three of you entered my house. Kyle changed the deadbolt and the doorknob while Dad stood there. You brought a box with children's items and placed them in my spare bedroom. I was at work. No one asked me. That is not. It is on camera. I said it quietly, but the impact was immediate. My father's face turned pale. Kyle looked at Dad. Dad looked down. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. From behind me, Janet's voice came from her driveway, calm and steady. I suggest you step off the porch now, Gerald. No one moved. A light wind pushed a few dry leaves across the ground. The sound echoed in the silence. My father straightened his posture and looked at me the way he had my entire childhood. Like his authority should end the conversation. You are going to call the police on your own father? I am going to call the police on 3 people trespassing on my property. I took my phone out of my pocket and dialed 911. My hand was steady. My voice was clear. The operator asked what the emergency was. I am at 114 Maple Lane. 3 individuals are on my property with a moving truck. I have asked them to leave, and they are refusing. My mother started crying. Not quiet tears, but loud, dramatic sobs. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking as she cried. She turned toward Mrs. Henderson's porch and spoke loudly enough for the entire street to hear. How can you do this to us? We are your parents, Myra. We gave you life. Kyle kicked the porch step. This is insane. She is insane. My father stayed silent. His jaw moved side to side, tense, but he said nothing. He was thinking through everything. The cameras. The locks. The evidence. Down the street, more neighbors came outside. Mr. Padilla stood there with his teenage son behind him. A woman I had seen before but never met stood at the end of her driveway wearing a bathrobe. Janet Calloway stepped closer to the edge of her yard, near the low fence between our properties. She looked at me and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. I saw everything, Myra. I will give a statement if you need one. My mother turned her head sharply toward Janet. For a brief moment, her tears stopped. There was clear anger on her face, then it disappeared as she returned to crying again. The operator on the phone told me a unit was on the way. Estimated arrival time, 10 to 12 minutes. Those 11 minutes felt longer than anything I had experienced before. While we waited, my mother continued her performance. She walked across the lawn to Mrs. Henderson's fence, still crying, and held her hand through the wooden slats. She is forcing her own brother and his children, my grandchildren, out. They will have nowhere to go. Her voice broke at the right moments. It sounded practiced. Maybe not planned in advance, but she had spent years learning how to express pain in a way that made others feel responsible for fixing it. Mrs. Henderson looked uncomfortable. She gently patted my mother's hand but did not say anything. My father stood near his truck with his arms crossed. He had not spoken since I called 911. He watched me closely, like he was trying to understand who I had become. Kyle pulled out his phone and made a call on speaker. Aunt Linda's voice came through loudly. What do you mean she called the police? Kyle answered loudly so everyone could hear. Myra is calling the police on us for trying to move me and the kids into her empty house. Aunt Linda's voice responded sharply. Myra, that is shameful. I did not respond. I stayed on my porch and waited. Then Janet stepped over the low fence and walked onto my lawn. She moved slowly and calmly, like someone used to handling serious situations. She stopped in front of my mother. Donna, I have been your neighbor for 12 years. Last week, you told me right here that Myra agreed to let Kyle move in and that she was happy about it. Janet paused for a moment. She never agreed. You lied to me. My mother stopped crying. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. That was the first time her story started to fall apart. 9:24, the police arrived. A patrol car pulled up in front of the house. 2 officers stepped out. The first was a tall woman, Officer Reeves, according to her name badge. She looked over the situation carefully. The U-Haul truck, the pickup truck, 3 adults on the lawn, 1 person on the porch, several neighbors watching, and Janet standing nearby. Who called? She asked. I did. I stepped forward from the porch to meet her. I am the homeowner, Myra Townsend. These are my parents and my brother. I asked them to leave, and they refused. Do you have proof of ownership? I handed her my deed and my driver's license. She checked both and returned them. You are the sole owner of this property? Yes. She turned to my father. "Sir, the homeowner has asked you to leave. You need to leave." My father spoke with a strained voice. "Officer, this is a family situation. We are trying to help my son find a place to live." "I understand, sir, but the property owner has the legal right to decide who enters. She has asked you to leave." Kyle stepped forward. "She is my sister. I just need a place for my kids." Officer Reeves raised her hand calmly but firmly. "That does not change the law. If the homeowner wants you to leave, you must leave." My mother dropped onto the porch step dramatically, holding her chest. "This is what she does. She turns everyone against us." Officer Reeves glanced at her, then at me. Her face stayed neutral, but it was clear she had seen situations like this before. "Ma'am," she said to my mother, "please stand up and move to the sidewalk." My mother made one final attempt. Now standing on the sidewalk, with her mascara smudged, she pointed at me and raised her voice again. She invited Kyle to look at the house. "She is lying. She agreed to this weeks ago." Officer Reeves turned to me. "Do you have anything to add?" I unlocked my phone, opened the ring footage from last Thursday, and handed it to her. "This was recorded at my house on Thursday at 2:14 p.m. I was at work. I never gave permission for anyone to enter." She pressed play and I watched her follow the video carefully. My father unlocking the door. Kyle removing the lock and replacing it. My mother entering with a box of children's items. 12 minutes of clear footage. Every second recorded. The second officer stepped closer to watch. Neither of them spoke until the video ended. Officer Reeves looked at my father again. Her tone was still professional, but firmer now. "Sir, this footage shows you entering this property without permission and changing the locks. That may be considered criminal trespass." My father's face turned pale. Kyle stepped back and bumped into the U-Hall. My mother said nothing. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. Janet spoke again from near the fence. "Officers, I will provide a statement confirming that the homeowner never gave consent. I am a retired attorney. Donna Townsend told me last week that Myra had agreed. That statement was false." The second officer took out a notepad. Officer Reeves gave a final instruction. "All three of you need to leave the property now. Take the truck with you." Kyle moved first. He closed the back of the U-Haul without speaking, got into the driver's seat, and started the engine. He did not look at me. My mother walked to my father's truck slowly, opened the door, and shut it hard behind her. My father was the last one standing on the walkway. He looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw something different in his eyes, something tired and uncertain. Then it disappeared, replaced by the same strict expression he had always shown. He turned and walked away without saying a word. He got into the truck, started it, reversed, and drove off. I turned back to Officer Reeves. "I would like to file a formal trespass warning." She nodded. "We will document everything. Today's situation and the footage from last Thursday. You will receive a copy. If any of them return without permission, charges can be filed." "Thank you." She handed me her card, and then both officers left. The street became quiet again. The neighbors slowly returned inside. Mr. Padilla gave me a small nod before going in. Mrs. Henderson stood on her porch for a moment, then went inside as well. The Martinez family finished getting their children into their vehicle. Before she got into the driver's seat, Sophia Martinez looked at me and mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded. Janet walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Myra." I thanked her, went inside, locked the door, walked to the couch, and sat down on the floor in front of it. Then I cried. I did not cry because I had lost my family. I cried because I finally understood who they had always been. I need a moment to breathe here. That Saturday was one of the hardest days I have experienced in a long time. But I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and protecting yourself? Because that is what it comes down to. Write one word in your mind, peace or self, and think about where you stand. If this feels familiar, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes people understand more from a real story than from advice. The next part is what happened at my father's birthday the following day. Sunday morning. I woke up at 5 and stared at the ceiling. For 2 hours, I went back and forth in my mind. Do not go. Stay home. Let them say whatever they want. But I knew what would happen if I stayed home. My mother would stand in that church hall, surrounded by 40 people, and tell her version of events, where I was the one at fault. She would say that I called the police on my own parents. Mom began to cry, and these were not quiet tears. It was loud, intense, and impossible to ignore. She covered her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking as she cried harder. Then she turned toward Mrs. Henderson's porch and sobbed so loudly that everyone on the block could hear her. "How can you do this to us? We are your parents, Myra. We gave you life." Kyle kicked the edge of the porch step in frustration. "This is crazy. She is crazy." Dad stayed silent. His jaw moved back and forth as if he was grinding his teeth, but he did not say a single word. It was clear he was thinking through everything. Cameras, locks that had been changed, and the evidence against them. Down the street, more neighbors began to come outside. Mr. Padilla from 3 houses away stepped out with his teenage son behind him. A woman I had seen before but never spoken to stood at the end of her driveway wearing a bathrobe. Janet walked to the edge of her yard, standing near the low fence that separated our properties. She looked directly at me and spoke in a steady, clear voice that everyone could hear. "I saw everything, Myra. I will give a statement if you need one." My mom quickly turned her head toward Janet. For a brief second, her crying stopped. Her face showed pure anger, sharp and sudden, before she covered it again with another wave of tears. The operator on the phone informed me that a police unit was on the way, with an estimated arrival time of 10 to 12 minutes. Those 11 minutes felt like the longest time I had ever experienced. While we waited, my mother immediately started trying to control the situation. She walked across the lawn to Mrs. Henderson's fence, still crying, and reached through the wooden slats to grab the older woman's hand. "She is throwing out her own brother and his children, my grandchildren, Diane. They will have nowhere to go." Her voice broke at the exact moments needed to make it sound real. She had practiced this kind of emotional display her entire life. Whether she realized it or not, Donna Townsend had mastered the ability to show pain in a way that made other people feel responsible for fixing it. Mrs. Henderson, Diane, looked uncomfortable. She gently patted my mother's hand but did not say anything in response. Gerald stood near his truck with his arms crossed tightly and his jaw locked. He had not spoken since I called 911. He watched me carefully, like I was someone he did not fully recognize anymore, as if he was trying to reassess everything. Kyle took out his phone and made a call on speaker. Aunt Linda's voice came through loudly enough for everyone to hear. "What do you mean she called the police?" Kyle raised his voice so the entire street could hear him. "Myra is calling the police on us for trying to move me and my kids into her empty house." A sharp voice came through the speaker. "Myra, you should be ashamed of yourself." I did not respond. I stayed on the porch and waited, then Janet stepped over the low fence and walked onto my lawn. She moved slowly and with purpose, like someone who had spent 40 years working in courtrooms. She stopped directly in front of my mother. "Donna, I have been your neighbor for 12 years. Last week, you told me right here on the sidewalk that Myra agreed to let Kyle move in, and that she was happy about it." Janet paused for a moment, allowing everyone to absorb her words. "She never agreed. You lied to me." My mother stopped crying. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. That moment created the first visible crack in the story she had been building. The police car arrived at exactly 9:24. 2 officers stepped out. The first officer was a tall woman, and her name tag read Officer Reeves. She looked over the entire scene carefully. The U-Haul truck, the Ford pickup, 3 adults standing on the lawn, 1 woman on the porch, a growing group of neighbors watching, and a retired attorney standing nearby observing everything. "Who called?" she asked. "I did," I said as I stepped off the porch and walked toward her. "I am the homeowner, Myra Townsend. These 3 people are my parents and my brother. I have asked them to leave, and they are refusing." She asked for proof of ownership. I handed her the deed and my driver's license. She checked both documents carefully, compared the name and address, and then handed them back. "Ma'am, you are the sole owner of this property." "Yes." She turned to my father. "Sir, the homeowner has asked you to leave. You need to leave now." My father's voice sounded strained, as if he was holding back frustration. "Officer, this is a family issue. We are just trying to help my son find a place to live." She responded calmly, "I understand, but the property owner has the legal right to decide who can enter her home. She has asked you to leave." Kyle stepped forward. "She is my sister. I just need a place for my kids." Officer Reeves raised her hand firmly but calmly. "That does not change the law. If the homeowner wants you off the property, you must leave." My mother then dropped down onto the porch step in a dramatic way, placing one hand on her chest. "This is what she does. She turns everyone against us." Officer Reeves briefly looked at my mother, then back at me. Her expression remained professional, but there was a look in her eyes that showed she had seen situations like this before. "Ma'am," she said to my mother, "please stand up and move to the sidewalk." My mother made one last attempt to control the situation. Now standing on the sidewalk, with her mascara running, she pointed at me and spoke loudly so everyone within 50 feet could hear. "She invited Kyle to look at the house. She is lying. She agreed to this weeks ago." Officer Reeves looked at me. "Do you have anything to add?" I unlocked my phone, opened the Ring camera footage from last Thursday, and handed it to her. This was recorded at my home on Thursday at 2:14 p.m. I was at work. I never gave permission for anyone to enter. She pressed play and watched carefully. The video showed Gerald opening the front door, Kyle kneeling with a screwdriver while installing a new lock, and Donna walking inside carrying a box of children's belongings. The footage lasted 12 minutes, with every second clearly time-stamped. The second officer stepped closer to watch. Neither of them spoke until the video ended. Officer Reeves then looked at my father again. Her voice was still professional, but now it carried a sharper tone. "Sir, this video shows you entering the property without permission and changing the locks. This may be considered criminal trespass and unauthorized entry." My father's face turned pale. Kyle stepped back quickly and bumped into the U-Haul truck. My mother said nothing. For the first time in a long time, Donna Townsend had nothing to say. Janet then spoke again from near the fence. "Officers, I will provide a witness statement confirming that the homeowner never gave consent. I am a retired attorney, and Donna Townsend told me last week that Myra had agreed." That was false. The second officer took out a notepad. Officer Reeves gave a final instruction. "All three of you need to leave the property now, and take the truck with you." Kyle moved first. He shut the U-Haul door without speaking, got into the driver's seat, and started the engine. He did not look at me. My mother walked stiffly to my father's truck, opened the passenger door, and slammed it shut hard enough to shake the vehicle. My father remained standing on the walkway for a moment. He looked at me, and for a brief second I saw something different in his expression. It was something tired and worn down. Then it disappeared, replaced by the same hard expression I had always known. He turned away without speaking, got into the truck, started the engine, and drove off. I turned back to Officer Reeves. "I would like to file a formal trespass warning." She nodded. "We will document everything, including today's incident and the footage from last Thursday. You will receive a copy for your records. If they return without your permission, charges can be filed." I thanked her. She handed me a card and left. The street slowly became quiet again. Neighbors went back inside one by one. Mr. Padilla nodded at me before going inside. Mrs. Henderson stood on her porch for a moment, then went inside. The Martinez family finished putting their children into their minivan. Before getting into the driver's seat, Sophia Martinez looked at me and silently asked if I was okay. I nodded. Janet walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Myra." I thanked her, went inside my house, locked the door, walked to the couch, sat down on the floor, and cried out. I did not cry because I had lost my family. I cried because I finally understood who they truly were. I needed a moment to breathe. That Saturday was one of the hardest days I had experienced in a long time. But I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and protecting yourself? Because that is what it comes down to. Leave a comment with just one word, peace or self, and tell me which one you chose. And if this story feels familiar to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. This is not something people learn from a self-help book. They learn it through real stories. The next part is what happened the following day at my father's birthday party. On Sunday morning, I woke up at 5 and stared at the ceiling. For 2 hours, I went back and forth in my mind. Do not go. Stay home. Let them tell whatever story they want. But I knew what would happen if I stayed home. My mother would stand in that church hall with about 40 people and tell her version of events, making me the villain. She would say that I called the police on my own parents. She would leave out the locks, the footage, the U-Haul truck, the spare key, and the words, "She will get over it." She always does that. If I did not show up, her version of events would become the only version people would hear. And in a town like Ridgewood, the first story people hear is usually the one they believe. I got dressed carefully. I wore a navy blouse, slacks, and my good boots. I wanted to look professional because I am professional, and I knew my mother would be looking for any sign that I was weak. If my hair was messy, my eyes were red, or my clothes were wrinkled, she would use that against me. I placed a copy of the deed in my bag and checked my phone battery. It was at 92%, and the footage was already loaded. I made sure airplane mode was ready. I could hear Rob's voice in my mind saying, "If they lie, you have the truth." Janet sent me a message at 8. "You do not have to go." I replied, "I know. That is exactly why I am going." The church hall was about a 10-minute drive away. It was a simple fellowship hall with cinder block walls painted cream, bright fluorescent lights, and folding tables covered with paper tablecloths. A banner on the back wall read, "Happy Birthday, Gerald," in blue and gold letters. There were paper plates and a sheet cake from the bakery on Main. Around 30 to 40 people were there, including family members, church members, friends, and a few neighbors. It felt like my entire world was gathered in one room. I did not go there to make peace. I went because staying silent would allow them to win. The moment I walked inside, I felt the change in the room. It was subtle, but clear. It was the feeling you get when everyone has already heard a story about you. Aunt Linda was standing at the refreshment table pouring lemonade. When she saw me, she set the pitcher down and turned her back. Uncle Steve, who was near the cake, gave me a quick and formal nod. Cousin Rachel started to walk toward me, then stopped when she noticed Aunt Linda's reaction. She looked down and stayed where she was. The room was not openly hostile, but it felt controlled and planned. Everyone seemed to know their role, and mine was clear. I was the daughter who had called the police. My mother was sitting at the main table with Kyle. She wore a cream cardigan and a gold cross necklace. Something she only wore when she wanted to remind people of her faith. Kyle sat beside her with Emma on his lap, while Liam sat next to him coloring with crayons. He looked like a caring father, someone who needed help, someone who had been treated unfairly by his own sister. Pastor David Greenfield walked over and shook my hand. He smelled like aftershave. His handshake was warm, but his expression was cautious. "Glad you could make it, Myra. Not good to see you, not happy you are here, just glad you could make it," as if my presence was optional. I sat at an empty table near the back wall. There was a folding chair and a paper plate in front of me with no food on it. Kyle walked past me on his way to get coffee. He leaned slightly toward me and spoke quietly so only I could hear. "You actually showed up after what you did?" I kept looking straight ahead. "After what I did?" He did not respond and walked away. I sat there alone and waited. After the opening prayer, my mother stood up. She held a plastic cup in one hand and a folded piece of paper in the other. Her hands were steady. She had done this many times before. Speaking at church events, family gatherings, and holidays. Donna Townsend knew how to control a room. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate Gerald," she began. 40 years of marriage, 3 beautiful grandchildren, and a lifetime of putting family first. She paused and looked around with a soft expression, preparing everyone for what she was about to say. "This year has been difficult for our family. Gerald and I have always tried to care for all of our children equally. We have always taught them that family comes first." She paused again and swallowed. "But sometimes one child forgets what family means." Then she looked directly at me. Every person in the room followed her gaze. I remained still. My hands were flat on the table. My heart was beating fast, but my face showed no reaction. Years of working on construction sites, managing crews, dealing with inspectors, and handling difficult clients had taught me how to stay calm under pressure. "When your own daughter calls the police on you," she said, her voice breaking at the perfect moment. "When she refuses to help her brother's children have a stable home, it breaks a mother's heart." A quiet reaction spread across the room. Aunt Linda wiped her eyes. Uncle Steve slowly shook his head. A woman from the church choir covered her mouth in shock. My mother sat down. My father reached over and held her hand. The room looked at me with disappointment and pity. She had finished her speech, and now I was clearly the problem in everyone's eyes. That was the moment I stood up. The chair made a loud scraping sound as I pushed it back. Every person in the room looked at me. I walked to the center of the room so everyone could see me clearly. "I love my father. Happy birthday, Dad." I meant what I said. My voice was calm. "But I need everyone here to hear the truth, because what you just heard is not the full story." My mother grabbed my father's arm as if trying to stop what was about to happen. I continued. "I bought my house 2 years ago with my own money, my own savings, and my own mortgage. No one in this family contributed anything." I opened my bag and held up the copy of the deed. "This document shows that I am the sole owner." The room became completely silent. Last Thursday, while I was at work, my parents and my brother entered my home without my permission. Kyle changed the locks. My father supervised. My mother brought a box of children's belongings and placed them in my spare bedroom. None of them asked me. None of them had my permission. I took out my phone. The video was ready. I walked to the AV card in the corner and connected my phone to the screen. The video played on the mounted TV. Everyone watched as my father opened the door, Kyle worked on the lock, and my mother carried a box into the house. The time and date were clearly visible. For 12 minutes, no one spoke. Aunt Linda slowly placed her lemonade down. Uncle Steve stared at the screen. Pastor David stood still, watching. My father's face turned pale again. My mother looked at me and said, "You are twisting everything." I looked directly at her. "The camera does not change anything, Mom." The silence after the video ended was overwhelming. Pastor David finally spoke. His voice was calm, but his expression was serious. "Gerald, is this true?" My father did not respond. He stared at the table in front of him. The cake behind him remained untouched, with "Happy Birthday" written in blue icing. My mother tried to speak again. "We were just looking at the house for Kyle. We were trying to help." At that moment, Janet stood up from her seat near the door. "No one expected her to speak. I was there yesterday when the police arrived," she said. I gave a witness statement. Gerald, Donna, and Kyle arrived with a U-Haul truck and tried to move Kyle into Myra's house without her knowledge or permission. She paused. "And Donna, you told me last week that Myra had agreed to this." "That was not true." The mood in the room changed. Aunt Linda turned toward my mother. "Donna, you told me Myra agreed." My mother said nothing. "You told me she was happy about it. I sent her messages because of what you said." Her voice became louder. Kyle stood up quickly. He picked up Liam and took Emma's hand. "We are leaving." He walked out without looking back. My father remained in his seat, looking defeated. The party ended quietly. People slowly gathered their things and left without speaking much. The cake remained untouched. The lights were turned off. Pastor David walked my parents outside. I did not hear what he said to them. The following week was quiet, but not peaceful. On Monday, I filed an official trespass warning at the Ridgewood Police Department. Officer Reeves completed the paperwork. My parents' names and Kyle's name were added to the system as a public record. In a town with 9,000 people, news like that spreads quickly. By Tuesday, Pastor David had called my parents in for a private meeting at the church. I was not there, and no one told me what was discussed. But the next Sunday, they sat in the back row instead of their usual place, which told me enough. On Wednesday, Aunt Linda called me. She cried for the first 4 minutes. Then she said, "I should have asked you directly. I believed your mother. I am sorry." I told her I appreciated the call, but I did not tell her everything was okay, because it was not. On Thursday, Kyle applied for a studio apartment through the county housing program, and he qualified. It was the first time he had handled something like that on his own. On Friday, my mother sent me a long message with 4 paragraphs. I read it carefully. She did not apologize. Instead, she wrote, "You embarrassed your father on his birthday in front of our church and our community. I hope you are proud of yourself." I read the message once and then locked my phone. "No, Mom. You humiliated yourselves." I only made sure everyone in that room could see the truth clearly. 2 weeks later, my phone rang at exactly 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was Dad's number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but at the last second I answered. "Hello." He cleared his throat twice before he spoke. His voice sounded different, weaker, like someone who had not been sleeping properly. "I am not calling to apologize. I do not know how to do that." I leaned back against the kitchen counter and stayed quiet, letting him continue. "I just thought I was helping your brother. He lost his wife. He lost his house. He has been sitting on my couch every night watching television until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I kept thinking that if he had a place, a real place, he would pull himself together. He would become the father those kids need." He paused, then added, "And your house felt like the solution. You have 3 bedrooms, Myra." I answered calmly, "I earned those 3 bedrooms, Dad." There was a long silence. I could hear him breathing, and I could hear the television in the background. Some evening news report, a weather update, the familiar sounds of my parents' living room. The same place where I was never the first priority. "I know," he said finally. "I know you did." Another pause, longer this time. "I thought you would understand because you have always been the strong one." There it was, the belief that had shaped our entire family dynamic. Myra is strong. Myra can handle it. Myra does not need what Kyle needs. Give to Kyle because he is struggling. Take from Myra because she will survive. I took a breath and said, "Being the strong one is not a reason to take from me, Dad." His breathing became uneven, not quite crying. Because Gerald Townsend does not cry, but it was close to it. Something heavy pressing against everything he had kept inside for years. "I know that too." I said quietly, "I love you, Dad, but I cannot trust you right now." He answered, "I know." Then the call ended. There was no goodbye, no promise, nothing resolved. Just 2 people who loved each other but could not find a way to say it without something breaking between them. That weekend, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote an email. I sent it to the family group chat, the same one my mother had used to share her version of events. Every cousin, every aunt, every uncle received it. I kept the message short and direct, the same way I write professional reports. Clear, simple, and without extra words. I wrote, "I love this family. I always have. But moving forward, I am setting 3 boundaries that are not open for discussion. 1. My home is my home. No one enters without my clear permission in advance. 2. I will not discuss my property, finances, or living situation with anyone in this family. Those topics are closed. 3. I am open to rebuilding trust, but trust is rebuilt through actions, not words. I have heard many words over the past few weeks. I will be watching for actions." I read the message twice, pressed send, and closed my laptop. Responses came in over the next few days. Aunt Linda replied with a short message. "I understand, Myra. I am here if you need me." Uncle Steve sent a thumbs up emoji, which for him was the equivalent of strong approval. Cousin Rachel sent me a private message. "For what it is worth, I heard the full story from Janet at church. I should have called you sooner." Kyle replied in the group chat with just one word. "Fine." It was the first time in his life that he did not argue or defend himself. Something had changed in him. I did not know what it was yet, and I was not going to give him too much credit for one word, but "fine" from Kyle Townsend, without excuses or blame, felt like a small but real shift. My mother replied 48 hours later. "This is cold, Myra." My father did not reply at all, but I noticed that he did not delete the message either. I closed my laptop and made dinner. Chicken, roasted potatoes, and green beans. A simple meal for one person. My meal, in my house. The following Saturday, Janet came to my door carrying a peach cobbler that was still warm. "You handled that situation better than most lawyers I know," she said as she handed me the dish. "And I know many lawyers." I laughed, and it felt unfamiliar, like my face needed to remember how to do it. We sat on my porch and ate the cobbler together. She talked about her plans for a rose garden in the spring. I told her about a retaining wall project I was managing at work. We talked about normal, everyday things. The kind of conversation that happens between people who have been through something difficult together and have quietly decided to keep moving forward. On Tuesday evening, there was another knock at my door. It was Mrs. Henderson. Diane stood there holding a bottle of wine, looking slightly nervous. "I just want you to know that I told my daughter about what happened," she said. "She is dealing with something similar with her in-laws. They have been pressuring her about her house since her divorce." She held out the bottle. "She asked me to thank you." I asked, "For what?" Diane answered, "For standing up for yourself." She said she did not think people actually did that. I took the bottle and said, "Tell her that they do." The next morning, I found a card in my mailbox. It had been placed there by hand, without a stamp. It was from Sofia and Marco Martinez. Inside, it read, "Respect your house, your rules. We are glad you are our neighbor." I placed it on my refrigerator using a magnet. That evening, I sat on my porch. The air was cold, but I brought a blanket and a cup of coffee. I stayed outside until the streetlights turned on. For the first time in weeks, I did not check my phone to see if my parents had called. I did not open the group chat. I did not replay arguments in my mind. I simply sat there, breathing, in front of my house, on my porch. 3 months passed. Kyle kept the studio apartment. He did not enjoy it. It was only 200 square feet, with a small kitchenette and a view of a parking lot behind a laundromat. But it was his first lease with only his name on it. His first rent payment from a bank account that only he controlled. He found a job at Cartwright's Auto Repair on Route 9. It was not impressive work, mostly oil changes, brake repairs, and tire rotations, but he showed up every day. 5 days a week, for 4 weeks, then 8, then 12. His boss, Dale Cartwright, told someone at the local hardware store that Kyle was the most reliable worker he had seen in years. In a town like Ridgewood, news like that spreads quickly. I heard it from Janet. Heather noticed the change too. She started allowing Kyle to pick up Emma and Liam on Friday evenings instead of Saturday mornings. That gave him an extra night with them every other week. Kyle bought a set of bunk beds from a thrift store on Franklin. He assembled them himself, which according to Heather was something new for him. My mother never apologized, but she stopped sending long messages filled with guilt. The family group chat became quiet. There were no more prayer requests, no more dramatic messages. The silence was not forgiveness, but it was no longer hostile, and that was enough for now. In February, my father sent me a photo. There was no caption, no message, just an image of a wooden bookshelf he had built in his garage. It had dovetail joints, a walnut finish, and 3 shelves. It was the kind of work he used to do before his back problems started. He had always been a builder, just like me. We had never talked about that shared part of ourselves. I did not reply immediately, but I saved the photo. The following week, Aunt Linda invited me to lunch. It was the first time someone in the family, outside of my parents, had reached out on their own. She asked how I was doing, and this time she truly listened to my answer. It is Sunday afternoon in March now. The kind of day when winter is almost over, slowly giving way to spring. The sunlight coming through the trees feels soft and steady. I am sitting on the porch that I repainted last summer. My coffee is still warm. The camera above my front door is blinking a small blue light, recording everything like it always does. The door is locked. It is always locked now. That used to make me feel sad. Now it just makes me careful. I used to believe that being loved meant being needed. I thought that if I was helpful enough, dependable enough, and quiet enough, they would finally see me. I built my life around that belief. I worked harder, asked for less, and stayed quiet to keep the peace. I did it so often that I forgot what my own voice sounded like when it was not apologizing. But they did not see me. They saw what I could provide. A spare bedroom, a backup plan, a daughter who would move on and accept things because she always had before. So I stopped accepting it. And I started being honest. I am not going to say that everything is fixed. My mother has not called in 6 weeks. My father sends photos of his woodworking projects without any words. Kyle and I exchange short messages on holidays. Polite and careful. We are not enemies, but we are not the same as before. And I am not the same person either. If your family expects you to make yourself smaller so someone else can take more space, that is not love. That is control. And you are not something to be handed over or used. This is my porch, my coffee, my quiet Sunday. This is my home. This is my story, or at least the part one I'm ready to share. If you have read this far, then you probably understand this feeling. The feeling of choosing yourself instead of following someone else's expectations. I want to ask you one question. What is a boundary you wish you had set earlier? Share it in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this about people choosing themselves, you can check the description below. There are many more stories waiting. Thank you for being here. It means more than you realize.